The Monstera Acacoyaguensis is quickly gaining popularity, and the key to this plant's success is light and a climbing pole. Hey, Lee here, helping you become a better plant parent, and this is the Monstera Acacoyaguensis. This plant has the extreme tendency to run, which means it'll produce longer internodal sections without any leaves if it doesn't get adequate sunlight. Juvenile forms of this plant have the tendency not to fenestrate, so your main goal should be to mature it as fast as possible. Increase your light by a lot. You could easily compare this plant to the Monstera Adansonii, but in my experience, the Adansonii, when given a lower level of light, it will fenestrate and develop larger leaves much faster than the Acacoyaguensis. If you're keeping your Acacoyaguensis in medium to bright indirect light, you're very likely going to see small incremental increases in the leaf size, but more than likely, you're not going to see any increases at all. This plant needs bright, dedicated window space to grow successfully. Personally, I think direct light indoors is a must for this plant. I have mine growing about 1 to 1.5 feet of large south-facing windows, and throughout the summer, it's going to be getting extremely intense direct light. My same rules apply when you're increasing your sunlight to all other plants. Make sure you do it gradually over a long period of time. I find that this Monstera can handle larger increases of light compared to other plants, but you should still use caution. Now, in my opinion, this Monstera is absolutely not a hanging basket kind of Monstera. They tend to lose their fenestrations and decrease their leaf size extremely quickly, so you're going to need a climbing pole if you want these leaves to mature. Now, while I've shared my not so hot opinions of using moss poles in the past, I do think that this plant may be an exception where a moss pole would benefit significantly more than other types of Monstera. Whatever climbing methods you use, make sure that you do identify the back of the plant where most of the aerial roots are coming from. Plant that side towards your climbing pole and try to make sure that the aerial roots are in constant contact with the climbing pole. When your aerial roots are constantly in contact with that climbing surface, it will allow the roots to dig in, which will promote larger leaves and more fenestrations. In my care, this plant has been extremely fast with its leaf growth, but I've heard so many different accounts of how the roots are growing. I've seen people speak about how their roots are growing constantly but not producing any leaves, and in my plant, it's produced so many leaves but the roots have barely grown at all. In any case, if your plant is growing quickly, make sure that you're fertilizing regularly so that you can continue to support that great leaf growth. Now, while I've just been using slow release granules, you can use whatever fertilizer you're comfortable with, as long as it actually shows numbers for the NPK values. Typical suggestions for Monstera is to use half-strength fertilizer around once a month, but again, use what you're comfortable with. For me, the Acacoyaguensis seems to have an abnormally high failure rate when it comes to water propagation. When I propagated mine, I lost around 20 to 25% of the cuttings. The aerial roots just didn't end up growing and the plant couldn't take up enough water, and eventually the leaves just shrivel up. So if you do attempt to propagate this plant, make sure that you have a long enough vine so that you can take multiple cuttings. Now, this Monstera is overly sensitive to overwatering, so make sure that you're extremely careful with your watering frequency and make sure that you're using a chunky soil mix. You would absolutely need to use something similar to my mix over here. You can learn more about fertilizing your Monstera over here, or if you're looking to find out how to get your plant to fenestrate faster, you can check out this video here. Like the video if it was helpful and consider subscribing. See you next time.